Welcome to the Shema podcast, the podcast for the perplexed, where Torah insights intertwined through personal stories as well as interviews with leading Torah scholars demonstrate the empowering qualities of Torah and mitzvot. For more great Torah learning through Torch, the Torah Outreach Center of Houston, go to torchweb.org. Now to the show.
I am sitting across from someone that I greatly admire, that I am so appreciative that I can call a dear friend, the executive director of Torch, Rabbi Aryeh Wolbe. Before I begin, I want to say that I have spoken with many of his colleagues at Torch, and when they describe his work schedule, from what he does from when he wakes up in the morning to when he goes to bed, they all had very similar stories to tell. And I will tell you that just by listening to this man's work ethic, it made me feel physically exhausted and made me feel like I had to take a nap after just listening to it. So thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you, learning from you, and allowing others to do the same.
Thank you, Dan. It's an honor to be here. I hope and pray that one day I will live up to your high accolades and your introduction. I strive to work hard. I strive to do a good job, and hopefully one day I'll be successful.
From what I hear, it's pretty nonstop. I need to find out what your supplement regimen is in order to keep your energy level so high. But I think it's just your total commitment and love of the Jewish people. That probably is what fuels you. We're recording this interview in my home in Kingwood, Texas, which if you're not familiar with the Houston area, we are in the northeast quadrant of Houston, and all the Jewish communities, the Aruvs, are all on the exact opposite side of Houston. When we moved into this house about 4 years ago, we custom built this house. We picked out all the flooring, countertops, put so much effort and care into everything we wanted for the house to look like. We bought new furniture. We had a decorator come out and select the paint colors, and she found artwork for the walls and did our drapes and all these amazing things. And when we moved in, I decided I want to become Shomer Shabbat. And we became Shomer Shabbat. And I would say probably like a month later, we find out from the school that my daughter is in a play at the elementary school right down the street on a Saturday. On Shabbos afternoon, we walk down the street, we stand in line, and I see that they are collecting everyone's money to see the play to go in. And of course, I'm not carrying my wallet. I can't do a business transaction. And I get up to the front and I have to explain to someone, and out here, no one has any idea what an observant Jew is or how they live. They've had no exposure to it. So I get to the line. It's my turn. I say, I don't have any money with me, which is an easy out. And she's like, well, that's okay. Can you just sign your name right here and we'll have you send us the money at a later date? And now I'm thinking, I have to explain to this person why I can't sign my name, which there was no way to do it. I just said, I can't sign my name. And everyone in line's getting frustrated. What is this guy's problem? What is he doing? And finally, the guy behind me got frustrated and just said, here, I'll pay for his family. Go inside. When I got home that day, it was so disheartening because I realized I'm in this home that I put so much care into to design, and I can't stay here. And it was a lot of anguish over the last 4 years to where we're so excited and delighted that we're finally at that place now. We're ready to move in the community.
When you have such an incredible challenge as you had in that experience particularly, and I'm sure you've had dozens, if not hundreds of others, of challenging things where you have to sort of explain why are you the weirdo here who just can't do anything. When the family wants to get together, you're not there, and it's like you can't participate in so many things that happen on Shabbos. I want you to know that that's usually the indication you're doing the right thing. Because when someone does the wrong thing, usually they don't get so much pushback. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, has no problem. When someone does something that is dishonest, he's like, I'll succeed your way. I'll get you even. I'll give you more success. When someone does the right thing, we're always faced with challenges. And whenever you have that elevation of holiness, you'll have the challenge trying to knock it down. Shabbos is the greatest gift God gave us. God tells us, the Talmud records, how God said to Moses, Matana tova yesh li bebeis Kenazai. I have the greatest gift. It's hidden in my treasure. And I want to give it to the Jewish people. And it's called Shabbos. Shabbos Shema. Its name is Shabbos. And that's going to be the special gift I give to the Jewish people. So when you embark on a new mission of observance of Shabbos and elevating your connection with the Almighty, what do you think? The Yetzer Hara is just going to sit back and say, sure, Dan, step all over me. No problem. No, he's going to make it difficult. And I'm sure there are hundreds of challenges that you've experienced in your 4 years living in this house where Shabbos is sometimes a struggle because, and it shouldn't be, it's the greatest day in the world. You know, a great rabbi I once heard say, if you take, those big water coolers and you have a spout on the bottom, what happens if you have one of those that has 6 so that, people can take it one time? So you have 6 spouts. It's great. So 6, players can fill up their cups at one time. So you see, I have a great idea. Let me add a 7th and then I'll have more water, right? We all know that you're not going to have more water. All that will happen is that it'll empty out the water quicker. We have 6 days a week. God says on those 6 days, work your tail off. Do everything you need to do the entire 6 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Shabbos la Hashem Elokecha, but Shabbos is for Hashem. Shabbos is a day for us to invest in our relationship with God, with our family, with our friends. We have all the greatest delicacies. Shabbos is it. So if you had an extra spout on the 7th day, so all you're doing is emptying out the bucket quicker. Because what's designated for a person to earn during that year is already predestined from Rosh Hashanah. He's not going to earn a penny more or a penny less because he worked that day of Shabbos. On the contrary, our sages tell us that there's not going to be any blessing, so he will earn less. There's not going to be any blessing from what the person earns on Shabbos. Right? Ki hi mekor habracha, the source of all blessing is Shabbos. If you want to know what infuses the rest of the week, it's Shabbos. So I'm giving you a pat in the back, a virtual pat in the back from across the table. Keep the fight real and keep it going because that is the fight of our lives. I know you didn't ask this question, but I want to share with you my passion for Jewish outreach.
Okay.
When I was about 16 or 17 years old, it was the first time that I was fully understanding a single line of Talmud. I mean, I broke my teeth. I was born in Israel, but I was raised in New York. And reading ancient Aramaic text is not always the easiest thing for an American boy. And I can read it, but to understand it, and then to understand beyond the actual translation of the words, the deeper meaning behind it. And then you have the commentaries of Rashi and Tosafot, seeing the early commentators and then the later commentators. And my mind was blown. And I remember jumping out of my seat and shaking my study partner. I'm like, get excited! This is amazing! Can you imagine? This is the greatest thing in the world. And I started learning much more. I started like, this is incredible. And I couldn't get enough. I could not get enough. It was so exhilarating. It is so powerful. And then I started learning about mitzvahs, and I felt that, I grew up in a Shomer Shabbos home. I never had a challenge with observance of Shabbos. I never had a challenge. I've never gone past a Burger King or a McDonald's and said, ooh, I really want a cheeseburger. I've never had that temptation. I always tell my students, I say, you realize that your reward in heaven will be much greater than mine? Like, you can say every single time you pass the Burger King, I didn't eat it, and I wanted it. And I can go and say, down the block from the Torch Center is a McDonald's, and I've never gone in. And God will say, well, that was never your challenge. I'm not going to get 1 ounce of reward for it. You realize how unbelievable that is? So when I started understanding a single mitzvah, the mitzvah of tefillin, the mitzvah of mezuzah, the mitzvah of Shabbos, the mitzvah of family purity, I was like mind blown. I was like, you realize that the Jewish people have the greatest gift in the world in the Torah. You know what the whole world is running after? There's not a human being on planet Earth that doesn't seek pleasure. Every human being seeks pleasure. The greatest form of pleasure is happiness. And Judaism is obsessed with happiness. Everything about Judaism is happiness. And if we understand every single mitzvah properly, we will see how it is an ingredient for happiness. And you know what? It's an amazing thing. As soon as I learned these things, I put on tefillin every day. But I didn't know why I was putting it on. I wore tzitzis every day. I never even had a temptation not to wear tzitzis. There's something called FFB, which is from birth. I call it FFH, from habit. I had no idea why I did it. The minute I learned it, and I was listening to lectures about these different mitzvahs, and suddenly it hit me. I'm like, oh my goodness, we have the keys to happiness. And how in the world can I be selfish and say to myself, you know what? I'm not into Jewish outreach. And I called my father. I remember exactly where I was. And I said to my father, I got it. It's like in Hebrew, they have a saying is like, Nafal ha'asimon. The coin has dropped. The idea was that you put your coin into the telephone. When the other person picked up the phone, it dropped. That's when you were charged. And I remember telling my father, how come I never knew this till now? How come I never knew what the true meaning of Jewish marriage is? What's the true meaning of kosher? Hey, it's the laws. Does it have a kosher symbol? Does it not have a kosher symbol? What's behind it? Why in the world should there be a kosher symbol? What's the significance of every single mitzvah? And going to, behind the scenes, open up the curtains and look at what's going on behind the scenes. And many times people just judge Judaism and perhaps different customs that we do just by because we're extremists or because we're obsessed with happiness. And it's the only thing that Judaism is really focused on. Our relationship with God is the key to our happiness. Many people think that external means are what's going to fulfill them, meaning their happiness. I'll buy a new car and then I'll be happy. I'll get the new iPhone, I'll be happy. I'll build a new house, I'll be happy. I'll go on this cruise and a fancy vacation, fly first class, then I'll be happy. All of these things, or I'll amass all of this money and then I'll be happy. Show me a person who's had all of those, and show me a righteous, poor Torah scholar in Jerusalem, and I'll show you the difference of happiness. I've seen a man, I've gone to see him in the old city of Jerusalem, a man who probably can't scratch 2 shekels together. Such a poor man. And I walked into his house because someone in the United States asked me to bring him some money. And I came into him, and the glow on this man's face, the shine, the love, the happiness that was pouring out from him and his wife was it's happiness on steroids. And here's a guy who's living in a small, this little part of your kitchen that we're sitting in is the size of his house. And I'm not exaggerating. This was his house. And it was so small and cramped, filled with 1 billion tons of happiness. And you can feel it with your fingers. You can feel the happiness and the joy. And he doesn't have means. He doesn't have a car, and he doesn't have, a satellite radio, and he doesn't have all of these things. He has 1,000% joy. Doesn't mean that we're it's in a way it seems foreign to us, So Rabbi, are you suggesting that we should get rid of all of our? No, God gave it to us. God gave it to us to enjoy. But look at the irony. We have today in this world that we're living in, 2020, we have more wealth in the United States than ever in the history of mankind. Even the poor person who's on Medicaid and food stamps has more than a king had 300 years ago. They can get on any metro bus. They can probably get free tickets to a baseball game and a football game and a basketball game because they give charity as well. And they can get a free television from the government and a free cell phone from the government. It's unbelievable. And yet, that's the poor people. Think of the people it's unbelievable.
Like J.P. Morgan are one of the richest people in the world from the turn of the last century, came into one of our homes, that they would think that we were one of the top industrialists of our century. How do you live like this? What did you do?
And yet, we have more people on medication for anxiety and depression in our generation than ever before in the history of the world. More in the United States than any other country.
Did you see the survey that came out last year? There was a survey done where they surveyed millennials, and it was some crazy stat, I want to say 55-60% of millennials said they were depressed. And when they asked the top 2 reasons given on why they were depressed, one of them was intermittent Wi-Fi access, and the second was low cell phone battery life.
How sad is our state, right, of mankind?
But it's the nature of by default, if we don't train ourselves, we can take things for granted. And, our kids grew up with technology, and that becomes the baseline, and we just take things for granted.
And sadly for our children, it is the baseline. When our children look at us and we're looking at our cell phones instead of looking at them, or they're calling our names and we're just finishing up an email and not giving them the proper attention, then they think, maybe that cell phone is more important than me. It's a big challenge because we're raising a generation that is addicted to technology. But how does the Torah address that? The Torah addresses that every single morning. We wake up and we start from nothing. And we say, Modeh ani lefanecha. Thank you, Hashem, for what? For giving me my soul back. And thank you for giving me my eyesight. And thank you for giving me the ability to stand upright. And for being able to, you think of all of the incredible things we take for granted every single day. And that is why the Jewish people have an obsession with happiness. Because we don't let a single piece of pleasure, a single experience of pleasure, pass us by without saying thank you. You're about to eat something. Stop and say a blessing. Don't just enjoy the food and don't say thank you. And when you're done with the food, don't just run from the table. Say thank you again. Because we don't want to have a single experience in our life that is pleasurable that we don't say thank you for. And Talmud teaches us, just like you praise God for the things that are pleasurable and are great, you also thank God for the things that are challenging and troubling and unfortunate. So if someone loses their ship, guess what? There's a blessing to say. Someone loses their fortune, there's a blessing to say. You know why? Don't forget who you are. Your relationship with God shouldn't change because you have more money or less money. On the contrary, when you have less, many times you're able to connect on a much higher bandwidth than when you have all of these distractions.
And the things are good and the wealth it can be great too, as long as it's put in the context of using it to develop that relationship.
Our sages tell us that the purpose of materialism is to elevate it. Elevate the materialism. You see, Abraham, when he bought a field from Ephron, what did he do? It says, Vayakam ste Ephron. As soon as Abraham acquired it, the land got elevated. Doesn't mean he picked it up, but it got elevated because now he took it to a whole spiritual level. We can take a coffee mug. A coffee mug can be a terrible thing or it can be an amazing thing. How do we use it? Our car. You can drive a Bentley, but when your neighbor asks you for a favor, you're going to say, I don't really want to lend out my Bentley. Or is it, you know what, it's just a car. Use it, please, have it, no problem. Go take care of what you need. It's not a problem. Or is it going to be a limitation to our ability to help other people? So, you know, the Talmud tells us that Messiah, Mashiach, is going to come riding on a donkey. It's the most, I mean, come on. We're living in the 21st century, right? We can get him a nice, stretched Hummer. We can get him a private jet. But really, he's going to come riding on a donkey? So we know that the words in Hebrew, particularly the names of animals, were given by Adam with a very specific intention. A dog is called a kelev because it's kol lev, it's all heart. We know that every single animal, I can go through a whole litany of animals and give you why their names are their names in Hebrew. Adam didn't just throw a name, elephant, kangaroo. He gave a name that defined the essence of the animal or the character of the animal. We know that when you want to call someone dumb, it's one of the names of a donkey that you call, because a donkey is one of those animals that has less character than almost any other animal. It's just a glob of meat. It's just a schlepper. Right? It just schleps things, right? A horse has character. It gallops. It has royalty. It has the name sus, which is sas, which is joy, it has like this giddy type of element to it. A donkey really doesn't have it. You want to call someone dumb, you call them a donkey. So what is the word for a donkey in Hebrew? It's called chamor. Chamor is the same exact letters as chomer, which is materialism. And our sages tell us Mashiach is not going to come riding on a donkey per se, but he's going to teach us what it means to control materialism. He's going to be in control of the materialism. And if you think about it in our generation, there's nothing more apropos than being in control of the materialism. Look at the world we're living in. We're living in a world where materialism is completely controlling us. It's very difficult for people to have balance in their life. All of Torah is teaching us balance because anything too much, I love barbecue potato chips. I love barbecue potato chips. And even barbecue potato chips, which is so enjoyable, you cannot eat a full bag of potato chips. Because you eat a full bag of potato chips, you're going to get sick to your stomach. Balance is the key. And the Torah teaches us everything about balance. You think of any pleasure in the world. Too much of it is not going to be good. There must be a balance. Torah lifestyle isn't just a few individual activities that comprise our day. It's not a bunch of different activities. It's a way of life. It's a phenomenal story I want to share with you, and to contrast it. Lahavdil elef alfei avdalos, not to compare between holy and unholy. The great Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who passed away in 1986, was known for his character. I'll tell you two quick, beautiful stories. The first is a woman once called his house a few hours before Shabbos, and we know that every Shomer Shabbos home is very hectic before Shabbos. It's, a lot going on, cooking, getting everything ready for Shabbos, setting the table, So she calls up a few hours before Shabbos. The rabbi wasn't exactly right by his phone at the moment. And one of his students picked up the phone. He says, "Hello, Rabbi Feinstein's office." And the woman says, "Hi, can I please speak to Rabbi Feinstein?" So the student says, Rabbi Feinstein is busy at the moment. Can I help you? So she says, yeah, I was just calling to find out what time candlelighting is. To which the student well, you don't need to call Rabbi Feinstein for candlelighting time. He tells her the candlelighting time. You don't need to call Rabbi Feinstein for that. Right? Rabbi Feinstein is very busy. You can just look at any Jewish calendar. To which the woman responds, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been calling Rabbi Feinstein for the past 25 years, and he's never said anything about calendars. That's the humility of someone who is understanding, right? You're talking about a scholar who finished the Talmud over 400 times, who every single Shabbat finished the tractate of Shabbat in its completion, its entirety. I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest Torah scholars of our generation, and he had the time to take with this older woman. She probably opened up a phone book and said, I'm looking for a rabbi. She picked out Rabbi Feinstein and called him for what time candlelighting is. And every single Friday for 25 years, he told her nicely, and she called back the next week, and he told her again nicely. So this is Rabbi Feinstein. One time, Rabbi Feinstein, you can imagine when he would leave the yeshiva and walk to the car, so he would get this whole escort of people asking him questions, taking pictures. My son is having a bar mitzvah. Can you give him a blessing? And so on and so forth. And people would huddle around him as he was walking to his car. He gets into his car, and they finally close the door, and the driver drives off to take him to his home. And when they turn the corner after they leave the yeshiva, Rabbi Feinstein asks the driver, he says, do you mind just stopping for a second? And the driver stops, and Rabbi Feinstein opens the door and pulls his hand out of the door. They closed the door by mistake on his hand. So the driver says, you waited all the way till here. Why didn't you tell me back there to stop? I would have stopped the car and you would have pulled your hand out. He says, can you imagine how embarrassed the individual who closed the door would be if he knew that he closed the door on my hand? He said, I would never want to embarrass. And now let me contrast that. I saw a video just a few days ago of the Pope, and he was greeting people. And a lady grabs his hand to shake his hand, and he pulls his hand away with an angry face, like, what's your problem? Where's your respect? Where's your honor? And he's like, that's the contrast between a great rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, and what they call a great Pope. I mean, the world of a difference. Here's a man who's filled with Torah, a man who's filled with walking in the ways of God, who the kindness is overflowing, and a man who claims to be holy, a man who claims to be righteous, and yet you see that his character is flawed on every level. We should never compare between holy and unholy, but to me, I saw it and my eyes were popping, and I'm like, this is what they call holy? This is what they call righteous? They obviously have never seen a Torah. They've never seen a righteous Jew, if this is what their idea of holiness is. Torah and the mitzvos is not about individual actions. It's about the entire person, the essence. I heard from a rabbi who actually went swimming with his rabbi. They went swimming back in Poland. He said he learned more from the dignity of how he swam, of how he carried himself, than all of his lectures. He says, you saw a man of holiness. You saw a man of righteousness. You saw a man of dignity. Right? You think to yourself, like, what? He's just swimming. It's funny because the Talmud says that there was a great sage who heard that there was someone in Jerusalem who they claimed was the Messiah. He had the characteristics of the Messiah. So he sent his son-in-law. He says, please go check him out, see if he indeed carries those qualities. Son-in-law comes back after his investigation, and he says, he's not. He says, what did you see in him that determined that he wasn't the Messiah? He says, I saw the way he was laying down. He was laying down supine, like on a beach chair, stretched out he says, the Messiah doesn't sit like that. He sits with dignity. I saw my grandfather of blessed memory. I saw him sit on a beach chair. His feet were on the beach chair, but he was sitting up forward with his book and studying. He can't lay back like that. That's not a way that now there's no sin, but to just give a concept that someone who realizes and lives with the presence that God is right in front of me at every moment, how can I lay like that? He said, this man is not Mashiach. He's not. I can tell just by the way he sits. The dignity that he doesn't carry doesn't allow him to be the Messiah.
The presence of God is that tangible as it should be, that if you were in front of the President of the United States, why would you act in any way less than that at all times when you know you're in the presence of the King?
If you want to see the dignity of our elected leaders, or, did you ever, I I challenge anyone to look all over Google Images, to look anywhere on the internet, to find a single picture of the Queen of England eating. I guarantee you, you will not find a single picture of the Queen of England eating. You know why? Because our sages tell us that eating is a matter of dignity. We learn it it says that someone who eats in the marketplace is compared to a dog. So you see people walking around in the mall eating their pizza. There's no self-dignity. There's no self-worth. Now, that doesn't mean you have to hide in your house, but there should be a sense of dignity. You're a holy person. You're a human being. You can accomplish so much, and you treat yourself like you're a dog. In the middle of the marketplace, you can just eat like that. There's something wrong.
Since I work here from home, I'll go grab something out of the fridge, stand over the sink, eat it, and then just go back, wash my hands, and go back to work. And I was reading just like in the Shulchan Aruch that, no, that's not the way you eat. You treat yourself like a king if you want to be treated like a king, and sit down and eat in a dignified manner. And that made total sense.
100%. And now let me ask you another question. How will you enjoy your food more when you're sitting in front of a table properly? Even food can be a vehicle to make your life holier. And food is a vehicle. We have to understand that the whole concept of blessings, it's a remarkable idea. That, it says that anyone who enjoys from this world and doesn't say a blessing first, he's a thief. Now, I don't know about you, but I pay my taxes. I work hard, earn an honest living, and I even give charity. And now you're telling me I buy an apple, I eat the apple, but I didn't say a blessing first, and you're telling me I'm a thief? Who did I steal this from? I paid for it. I did everything I needed to do. Why am I a thief?
Is it because you're stealing from yourself?
That's correct. You're stealing from yourself the opportunity to be happy. Because when you eat that apple and you don't stop and say, you know something, I'm the luckiest man on earth that God gave me an apple. If you don't stop and appreciate that, you're limiting your joy. If a man doesn't stop every single day and say that same praise that we do for our food to their children, to their spouse, and say, I'm the luckiest man on earth that I have you as my wife. I'm the luckiest man on earth that I have you as my child. Then you know something? We're missing out on love. We're missing out on joy. We're missing out on living a fulfilled and enriched life. So we're stealing from ourselves. So when we sit and we say, with proper respect, we respect ourselves. I'll tell you a story. There's a whole topic I talk about in my Musar classes about kavod, which is honor. And many times people think that when you're talking about honor, it's talking about honoring other people. And we focus on honoring ourselves, giving ourselves the due dignity that we deserve as human beings. And we're talking about the way one dresses, the way one talks. I was once giving this series, and one of the individuals I was learning with privately, an executive that I learned with, he says to me, do you think I carry myself with a dignity? So I said, I think you do. I think you always dress appropriately. You always carry yourself properly. But if you're already asking me, I want to ask you, do you think the way you talk represents who you are? I said, you're a CEO of a company, and every third word you say is a foul word. How do you think people look at you? Is this a person who respects himself? If every word that comes out of his mouth is inappropriate, that's not dignified for who you are. People look up to you. And he said, I never thought about that. I dress the part. I have to dress dignified. I would never give a presentation in front of all of my workers without a suit and tie. Great. But what's about the way in which we talk? I drive up to New York every summer with my family, and I drive back down at the end of the summer. My kids go to camps there, and my wife is there with her family, and it's a great time for my family, reignite their relationship with all of their cousins and so on and so forth. It's very nice. On our way back, we have the same experience every year. And that is when we pull back into Houston, my wife says, maybe we just stop over here at the supermarket and we pick up some bread and some milk and cereal so the kids have for breakfast tomorrow. And here I am. I'm dressed in shorts and T-shirt. And I say, okay, I'll run in. But I can't run in because I am a rabbi. And people see me as a rabbi. And so my wife's like, come on. It's not a big deal. I said, you know what? It's not even for me, but perhaps for my students. For them, I'm the one who they're learning Torah from. I'm representing Torah. I'm representing them. And I happen to be representing myself. I always have my dress pants and my dress shirt, pull it out, get dressed properly, and then I'll go in. But the idea is not because I'm trying to fake it, but because if you represent something, you have to dress the part. And it's not only dressing the part, it's acting the part. Let's circle back to what we said before. As a Jewish people, we represent what Torah is. We represent what God's people is. We have to carry that with honor, with dignity. And we have to properly represent what it means to be a Torah Jew. I want to share with you a study they did in Jerusalem. In the old city of Jerusalem, the streets are very, very narrow. So if you're walking on the street, it's like there's the wall and there's the street. And there's really not much sidewalk. So if you're walking on the street, the cars cannot drive by. Israel is not known as a place that has people who are extremely patient. So if you're walking on the street, they'll likely honk their horn at you. Except they found in this study that if you're wearing dignified clothes, they'll sit and wait patiently. So if you're a Armenian, whatever they call their leaders, a priest, right, and you're wearing the long robes, they won't honk the horn at you. If you're a rabbi and you're wearing a suit and tie, they won't honk the horn at you. If you're wearing clothes that are dignified, but if you're wearing your jeans and t-shirt, they'll just honk you. Get out of the road. There's a certain respect that is commanded by the way in which we dress. Now, again, I don't want it to be superficial that it's just the clothes, but you know that it's very different when you walk into a client's office and they're wearing a suit and tie and they're wearing shorts and flip-flops. You know that there's a very different presentation that is required for one than the other.
Right. If I do a lot of public speaking, I was just yesterday speaking, and sure, if I walked out on stage not wearing a suit, but wearing shorts and flip-flops, they certainly wouldn't have taken me seriously. For one, they would think that I don't take myself that seriously.
That's correct. I'll tell you this, okay? It's a little bit embarrassing, but when I moved to Houston, I didn't understand this concept. It's almost 15 years ago, and I remember I once walked into an executive's home, and he was, again, we were very close friends, and he said to me, he says, you know something, Rabbi? I don't think you respect yourself. I'm like, what? Excuse me, right? And he says, look at how you're dressed. You know, he says, your jacket doesn't match your shirt, and you don't have a tie, and you got to get new shoes. And he was right. It was hard for me to hear it, but he was right. And from that day on, I wear a suit and tie every day. And I also moved to white shirts because I'm not very good with the matching thing. But the idea is that it's not about me and my image only. You have to realize that when the difference between being just a Joe Schmo on the street and being someone who is a respected person, people expect a certain level of self-worth. That self-worth then translates to how you respect others. Because if you don't respect yourself, there's no way in the world you'll respect others. And that's where it really boils down to. If I don't properly respect myself, there's no way in the world I will respect others. So I'm a nobody, so I can talk about everybody else and call them a nobody because, but if you have a proper respect for yourself, then you say to yourself, you know what? Lashon hara. The Torah forbids us to speak slanderously about other people. But if I don't respect myself, I certainly don't respect others, and I'll talk freely about other people. But the minute I have you know what? I wouldn't like if someone spoke like that about me. I certainly wouldn't like if they said that in a way, in a place or in a time where I can't defend myself. Why am I speaking about others when they can't defend themselves? Why am I speaking about others negatively? I wouldn't want that either. So the idea is much deeper than just how we carry ourselves, but really translating that to how we deal with other people and how we respect and see other people.
That makes sense. Let me ask you a question. I want to, for most of us Jews, we're outside the community. And a lot of things have been said to me as I have become more observant over the years is people referring and saying, asking me if I'm now a Hasidic Jew. And my response is, I don't think so. I don't know. I know I study Hasidic texts like the Baal Shem Tov and Rabbi Nachman. But there's a lot, I think, misunderstanding because you have like here in Houston, you have Chabad, you have Yer Aruv, but they're all just Jews studying the same Torah, fulfilling the same mitzvah. Explain a little bit about where those different cultures come from, just for those of us who are outside the community and are a little perplexed by it.
Okay, so let me give you the 30,000-foot overview, okay? You know, I've had the question asked to me so many times, why are there so many different sects in Judaism? I mean, you have, just from the Hasidic dynasties, you probably have 1,000 different Hasidic dynasties. You have Babov, you have Belz, you have Satmar, you have Vizhnitz, you have Karlin, you have Chabad, Chabad is one of about 1,000 different Hasidic dynasties. I mean, you talk about Satmar, the largest, Gur, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Hasidic followers. It really is unbelievable. Why do we need so many? So you have to understand, first there's a historic perspective to it. There's also a I think, a very beautiful aspect. When the Jewish people were in the desert, God divided. Jacob had 12 sons. They're called the tribes. Each tribe had its own group. They had their own flag. They had their own leader. But what is forgotten, whether it's all of these Hasidic sects, whether it's the 12 tribes, is that we always had only one Torah. So it doesn't make a difference if they wear this type of hat or that type of hat, or no hat, or this type of kippah or that type of kippah, or this type of shoes or that type of shoes. It really doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, they all believe in the same exact Torah. And that's the number one most important thing that counts. Are we observant of the Torah, or are we not observant of the Torah? That's, at the end of the day, I always say that I don't believe in orthodoxy. I don't believe in reform conservative. I think it's all baloney. I think it's, that's where we pay our membership dues. But that's not real. What really is important, are we growing or are we stagnant? And I don't care what Hasidic sect you're part of. If you're not growing, it's a problem. I don't care if a person's not a member in any synagogue. If you're growing, that's what counts. So I think I would go to those people and say, Hasidic, what does that even mean? Does it mean that I'm investing in my relationship with the Almighty? Absolutely. I'm proud to be considered part of that group, whatever you call them. But when you get to the nuances of how, this one has this type of payas, and this one has that type of payas, and they curl it like this, and they curl it like that, they have it behind their ears, they have it in front of their ears, they don't have... What does the Torah tell us? The Torah, at the end of the day, tells us we cannot cut our side locks with a razor. That's what it says. I have payas behind my ears. Most people don't even realize that I do till I tell them that I do. That's what the Torah tells us. Does it tell us that we should have it, a long beard? It doesn't. There's no mitzvah in the Torah that says we should have. That's where the individuality. Exactly. The Torah doesn't say not to cut your beard, and it doesn't say that you should grow the beard. It says don't cut it with a razor. That's what it does say. So if you can find a shaver that is a kosher shaver, by all means. The Torah doesn't say that you shouldn't. You understand? So there are many levels beyond it. So why do many Hasidic people grow their beards? Because they want to be extra cautious and go above the required measure. Great. We say, Kol hamar beharezim meshubach. The more you add, the more you'll be praised. The more you'll be blessed. But is that the requirement? That's not the requirement. And we have to very carefully... who was the first one who tried to be a chassid? Eve, in the Garden of Eden. Because what did God tell her? God tell her, don't eat from the fruit of the tree. And what did she do? She translated it as, well, don't touch the tree. She added to it. If she would have said, God said not to eat it, but I'm going to make an extra measure not to touch it. That would be great. But that's not what she did. She changed the rules. And once the snake pushed her on the tree, and she touched it, and hey, nothing really happened. You see, you can really eat from the tree as well. And that was the mistake. Don't add rules when you don't know what the real reason behind it is.
So tell me a little about in the outreach world. Is it becoming, do you feel like you're overall and throughout the country from talking to colleagues who do this, that there's greater and greater momentum being built? Or are there more challenges out there now?
It's very interesting because we've been doing an international study to try to figure out the dilemma of the Jewish people right now. And there is a consensus that since the advent of the iPhone, Jewish outreach has become much more difficult. Because why do I need a rabbi when I have Siri? I can just ask what's the right thing to do, what's not the right thing. So what happens is really people have become much more distant.
But isn't that okay if someone wants to observe a mitzvah and they can find the answer online?
Yeah, but what happens is that the way you grow is with a relationship as well. Once you remove that relationship with a rabbi, so you remove all inspiration as well. Now, that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that you have much more available today with the advent of technology. You have, just in Torch, we have last year over 270,000 downloads of our podcasts. You have hundreds of thousands of views of our videos. So with the challenge, you have also the availability. But on the other hand, we find that the yeshivas in Jerusalem are empty. They're not as full as they used to be. The ones with the students who would come, it used to be, I wouldn't say a piece of cake, but it used to be a very easy transformation. You meet a young professional, he's intrigued, he's inspired, he wants to learn, he wants to connect. No problem, put him on a plane and send him to yeshiva in Israel. Today, I have a job, I can't leave my job. People have become much more complacent, much more complacent. I don't know if it's specifically because of technology, but we certainly have seen a huge uptick of that complacency where people just don't, I'm fine. I'm fine listening to Kiddush on my phone. I don't need to actually know how to read it. I can just have Siri say it for me. It's become sort of like this suburban Jewry in our own lives, so I don't need to go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. I can just watch it. That's becoming a very, very big challenge. So
what do you think about the other competing aspect that there's so many labels and other isms outside of Judaism that Jews identify with? Liberalism, conservatism, environmentalism, communism. Their identity is so entrenched in those ideals. And in some of them, there's some truth, whatever truth, where they reconcile with Torah. And a lot of times there's not. And when people grow up with a certain, ideology, it's not just something they say I agree with, it becomes part of who they are. And it becomes so how do you...
Let me tell you about Judaism. Okay. Judaism is not a religion. Judaism is a relationship. And I believe that all of the other isms are either, they need to be categorized as either something which is bringing me closer to God or distancing me from God. All of this secularism or the isms you're talking about, what is the real motive there behind it? Is the motive there to show how we, mankind, are in charge of this world and there is no God, which is the vast majority of the isms? Is a God, a creator of heaven and earth, who has expectations of us and has a relationship that he wants to build with us through these channels that he's given us in this world, and primarily being the Torah. The Torah is the guidebook. It's the manual for how to connect to the Almighty. So all of the isms, and we're finding more and more of the, I had a guy come to me sitting at my Shabbos table, and he says to me, Rabbi, I'm an atheist. I'm like, really? So as he was walking out, I was walking him out after the meal. It was a friendly, just said, by the way, I'm an atheist. So I told him, I'm really intrigued about your atheist, beliefs or non-beliefs. So I said to him, as he was walking out, we have this little bench, a kid's bench, right outside our front door. And I said to him, you see this bench? He says, yeah. I said, do you know how it got here? He says, you bought it in a store and you put it here. I'm like, no, silly. It just appeared here one day. I said, it dropped from heaven and it just landed right here. He says, that's ridiculous. I said, I'm not kidding you. I said, this is how this bench got here. It was just totally out of the blue. It just one day just appeared. And he says, but that can't be. I'm like, really? A bench can't really appear here just by itself? He says, things don't just happen like that. Didn't you just tell me a few minutes ago that you're an atheist? And in atheism, what do you believe? That there is no God. It just happened. I said, how can a bench not get here on its own, but this complex universe, complex human being, a complex world that we live in, and you're telling me that there is no God? So I told him, the God that you don't believe in, I don't either believe in. Problem is, you have the wrong idea of what God is. And now we can have a conversation. And he's like, you know what? All right, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this. The problem is that people like to fall into these isms because it's easier. It's a lazy way out. I'm just an atheist. Ooh, you must be intellectual. You must be, you must be so. You're not an atheist, right? You're just, you don't really know what it is to believe in God. You don't know what it means to have that relationship.
Yeah, people do associate if you say you're agnostic or an atheist is that you are beyond biases and that you are an intellectual.
It's a sad world we live in. The first is, Dan, I want to just thank you for giving me this opportunity to schmooze and to connect and to be in your beautiful home. And I also think that this is an incredible journey that you and your family, your incredible family, are embarking on. And it's very exciting for me. It really is because, I get infused with energy when I see you and your family, because it's not every day that you see someone who is taking this journey seriously and seeing that it's not just a given. You don't just download a file, say, make me Jewish, make me inspired, make me, religious and connected. There's a lot of challenges that go along the way. And to see someone who takes it with a smile and takes it, and to see you learning Wednesday nights with your study partner and you're all in and you're immersed in your study, it really is, it's a remarkable thing to see and to witness that transformation. But additionally, I want you to always be encouraged. There are many, many, many trials and tribulations that we all face. You know that there's one person who doesn't have any challenges, and that's the dead person. As long as we're living on planet Earth, we hope our heart, if you look at the EKG, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. Can it just go straight? Well, yeah, it could, but then you're dead. As a human being, we will all inevitably face challenges. We have ups, we have days that we're on top of the clouds, and then we have days that we're down. But we have to always remember that even when things are down, we're about to go up. And to never give up on our dreams, on our hopes, on our vision of what can be accomplished. And I really consider it an absolute honor to be here in your presence. And Shauna and Elsie are just phenomenal team players, all doing this as a family and growing. It really is exceptional. It's motivating, it's exhilarating, and it's very, very exciting.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. You and the other rabbis at Torch have been an invaluable resource to us because we've had so much to learn, coming from knowing literally nothing to helping us now get to this, basically the doorstep of actually moving into community and fulfilling all the mitzvot and being your neighbor. And we're really looking forward to it.
We're very excited. And I'm offering this to you and to all of your listeners on this podcast. You can call me 24/7. We ran a program for many years. It's called Kosher Month, Kosher Awareness Month. And it was the month of March. And we would have all of these signs and all of these in Costco and Walmart, in Sam's Club, and we partnered with Kroger and Belden's and Randall's and all of these local supermarkets, all of the caterers, the kosher caterers, the restaurants. It was really a phenomenal month where people can come and try kosher food and experience and have tour guides of how to find, how to identify kosher food, et cetera, et cetera. And one year we did something which was called, it was a little play on Overeaters Anonymous. We did Kosher Eaters Anonymous. And I would love to run the program, to run that little support group. But a woman who was new to kosher herself over the years, we asked her to facilitate that group. And she said something that was so remarkable. I would never have come up with this in a million years. So one of the people asked, but I don't understand. I really don't know what to do in a kosher kitchen. I have no idea. So what do I do? I'm going to get stuck inevitably. So she said, what do you think I did? She said, well, as soon as I moved into the community, I got the rabbi's cell phone number and I saved it on my phone. Every single time I had a question, I called the rabbi or I texted the rabbi. And I'll tell you, I can show you my phone right now. I have probably 25 or 35 messages that I get on a regular basis from people of a picture of a kosher symbol. Is this acceptable? Is this not acceptable? What should I do with, I used my milk spoon in my chicken soup by mistake, and I mixed this and I mixed that. What do I do? These are common questions that happen in my home. My wife says to me always, get out of the kitchen, because I'm trafing up her kitchen, right? So, but these are questions that are very common. They happen every day. And you need an answer. You're welcome to take my phone number, my cell phone, speed dial me anytime, 24 hours a day. I will be happy to assist you. If I know the answer, if I don't, I will make the phone calls to figure it out, or ask or learn through and do my research to find out.
That's where you guys have been so helpful. Just last Sunday when I had the realtor come out here, and then Shauna left, the realtor and her husband left, and the lady that came behind was lady taking the photographs. So I found myself in my office with a woman in my home. And knowing the laws Yichud, I realized, what am I supposed to do right now? So fortunately, I have yours, your brothers, Rabbi Cohen, Rabbi Busco on my phone. I immediately started calling. I know many of you were teaching classes, but I got Rabbi Busco. And I said, I'm in the backyard. What do I do? And he said, that's fine. Just stay out there until she's done. But there's situations where I don't have time to go pull my book and research and getting those answers, especially when we first started observing Shabbos, when we're getting ready, we were so nervous about things we need to know. Just knowing that we could get an answer like that was invaluable to us. So thank you.
And I want you to know that I've had phone calls from other rabbis calling me and telling me, particularly about yichud, which is that a man who's not married to another woman should not be alone with her. And I think it's very pragmatic, but the Torah understands the nature of human beings. And a man with a woman who he's not married to, there could be something that can happen. And the Torah says to avoid getting into a situation, don't be alone. So what do you do if you're a rabbi and you're going to meet with female students? It could be a problem. That's, by the way, why in the Torch Center we have windows in every room. precisely for that reason, because if a woman comes and she wants to speak privately with a rabbi, there is no privacy. There's a window, and there's no such thing that you can meet with the rabbi privately. I actually had a woman who came to me after class. She said, Rabbi, I need to see, it's a personal matter. I need to meet with you privately. I said, I'm sorry, I don't meet with women privately. You can meet with me either in my home when my wife is home, or you can meet with me here at the Torch Center. She says, no, it has to be private. I said, I can't help you. Find someone else. I cannot meet in private. I don't meet, if you're my wife, I can meet with you in private, but no one else. And unless it's in a public setting where other people can be there, but that's precisely because, and it's ironic that Harvey Weinstein's case just started today in New York in court. That's because without having those protective measures that the Torah gives us, anything can happen. The Torah understands the nature of mankind. So I get a phone call one day from a rabbi, a prominent rabbi in Houston, and he says to me, Rabbi, I'm going to teach a class right now in this woman's home, and I want you to be aware, this is the exact address. Come in anytime. And that's one of the abilities that you can do to eliminate this idea of yichud, of being alone, because you don't know if one woman is going to show up or if 20 women are going to show up. You're going in for a class. It could end up being a setup. It's just you and this woman, and you could be accused of something that is. So the idea of him calling me and giving me that information, that now he has a fear. And he has a fear that I might walk in that door any second. So if it is him alone, he wouldn't do anything.
But it is even more than what you may do, but there's this whole hashtag Me Too generation where innocent people could have been accused, and if they had just used these laws, those accusations couldn't have been made if they were just accusations.
3,300 years since the Torah has been given, it's never been wrong.
Well, thanks again, Rabbi. I appreciate it. I know you have a busy day, so I'll let you get back to it.
Thank you, and have a terrific day. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting Torch so they can continue to spread Torah wisdom to the world by making a donation at torchweb.org and clicking Donate in the top right corner of the page. And if you would like to get in contact with our host with comments, suggestions for future topics of learning, or questions for him or his guest rabbis, you may email him at president@torchweb.org.